Hey, my friends, welcome back and thank you for joining your girl, Anna B. Welcome to all of our new friends and subscribers. Thank you all for the support and love. Welcome to the BTW family. Shout out to our channel members. Thank you for the continued support. And a big shout out to all of our day ones and just everybody in between. In this episode, we're going behind the walls in Ohio. The women featured are either at the Dayton Correctional Institution or the Ohio Reformatory for Women. Let's get into it. On September 27, 2010, two people were walking down Superior Avenue in East Cleveland. They stopped between two buildings to use the bathroom when they smelled something dead. They assumed it was an animal until they looked inside the window of an abandoned apartment building and saw the partially clothed body of 58-year-old Diane Cloud lying face down. Her arms, legs, and feet were bound. East Cleveland police were notified, and according to court records, the following day, an autopsy was performed on Diane. Dr. Elizabeth Douglas found multiple contusions all over her body, most of them caused by blunt force impact while Diane was still alive. Diane had been suffocated and strangled to death. The doctor was unable to give a specific date of death because Diane was killed somewhere other than the abandoned building where she was found, but did estimate that Diane had been dead for at least 6 days. Authorities received a tip that led them to a Cleveland motel where fugitives 39-year-old Patricia Barrow and 57-year-old Milton Jones were hiding out. They had become persons of interest soon in the police's investigation. Patricia at the time had 2 warrants for her arrest, one being for felonious assault. Both Patricia and Milton were arrested on October 6, 2010, charged with aggravated murder and kidnapping. Their indictments came several days later. In January 2011, the court ordered Patricia to undergo a psychiatric evaluation to determine if she was sane at the time of the offense and if she was competent to stand trial. In March, a follow-up hearing was held, and based on the evaluations completed on Patricia, the court found her fit to stand trial. The sanity evaluation was no longer considered since she was not pursuing an insanity defense. There were lots of motions filed by Patricia and Milton as well as the state. But on July 14, 2011, Milton decided to accept a plea deal from the state. He pled guilty to involuntary manslaughter, kidnapping, and abuse of a corpse. His plea was conditioned upon his agreement to testify for the state at Patricia's trial, truthfully and consistently with the original statement that he provided the prior month. He wouldn't be sentenced until the end of the year. Patricia's trial commenced on November 28, 2011. Milton testified that in the early evening of September 18, 2010, he met Diane Cloud and his girlfriend Patricia in an area known as The Clock. They stopped at a store to buy cigarettes and beer as they all walked back to he and Patricia's apartment. Once they got back to the apartment, Patricia and Diane began to argue. The argument led to a physical fight, which started in the bedroom after Diane charged at Patricia. He said he observed Diane with a bloody nose before he left the room because he was tired and just wanted to go to sleep. Though he urged them to stop fighting, he did not attempt to break up the fight because he didn't want to be physically involved. Yet he watched the women fight from the living room through a hole in the wall, per court records. They eventually stopped fighting, and Diane had quieted down, he testified. But then he heard Diane asking Patricia if she could leave. Patricia wouldn't let her go after Diane had threatened to tell the police that she had been kidnapped. Then Patricia gets a phone call from another room. When she re-enters the bedroom, Milton then begins to hear Diane crying. He then saw Patricia grab a skillet from the kitchen. He couldn't see Diane's body, but it did appear to him that she was being hit with the skillet. Then he said it looked like Patricia was tying Diane up with the phone cord. Just before falling asleep, He saw Patricia tie a plastic bag over Diane's head. When he woke up the next morning, he said he heard a boy walking past his window talking about a naked woman on the floor. Patricia was sitting on the floor next to him. She told him Diane was dead. Once Milton confirmed Diane was dead, he and Patricia made plans to move her body. That same day, Sunday, September 19th, Milton and Patricia went to Milton's cousin's house. The two left the cousin's house with a shopping cart, which they took back to their apartment. Milton wrapped Diane's body in a blanket and put her in that cart. Later that day, Milton walked the cart with Diane's body to the abandoned apartment building, where he placed her face down and removed the blanket before leaving. He discarded the blanket away in a trash can where he also left that shopping cart. That same day, Patricia sold Diane's cell phone to a man that owned a convenience store. It was a week or so later when Milton learned that Diane's body had been found. The store owner who purchased Diane's cell phone from Patricia also testified at her trial. He confirmed that Patricia was the woman who sold him the phone, and phone records showed that he called his other store that day, September 19th, 2010, from Diane's phone. Patricia's ex-boyfriend also testified. He testified that in late September, he had given Patricia and Milton a ride to a gas station. While there, he overheard somebody telling Milton that the police was looking for him and Patricia. He said Patricia looked nervous and shocked and wanted to get out of there. The next day, he took them to a hotel and rented them a room in his name for a week. After seeing Patricia and Milton's pictures on the news, he had second-guessed his actions and called police, providing the tip that led to their arrest. He did not want to be involved or implicated in Diane's murder. The jury was handed the case on December 7th, 2011. 2 days later, they found Patricia not guilty of aggravated murder, but guilty on the lesser included offense of murder. She was also found not guilty on the remaining 3 counts. That same month, Milton Jones was sentenced to 7 years in prison. Per Ohio DOC records, he passed away before his expected release in 2017. On January 3rd, 2012, Patricia was sentenced to 15 years to life in prison. She's housed at the Ohio Reformatory for Women, and she has a continued parole hearing date for sometime in June of 2030. Diane Laverne Cloud was a daughter, a sibling to 7, and a mother of 2. May she rest in peace. Patricia McKern, there's not a lot of information on her, but she entered prison on February 9th of 1996, 8 days after she entered a guilty plea to aggravated murder with aggravated felony and murder of a witness specifications. She was sentenced to life in prison with parole eligibility after serving 20 full years. She recently went before the parole board in September 2025, and that outcome is still pending. In the case, according to court records, very limited court records, Patricia had a co-defendant. I'm not sure if Joseph McKern is her husband, her brother, or another family member. Again, I cannot confirm because I don't have any solid facts, but he too pled guilty to the same charge, aggravated murder. He also had one additional charge. It looked like he caught after this based off of the year date, but he was sentenced to 32 years to life. Joseph has since passed away. His last location was at the Corrections Medical Center. Pamela Lawson was arrested on January 6, 2015, charged with the death of Michael Days, her boyfriend. Pamela and Michael reconnected in June of 2014. At the time, Pamela was trying to separate herself from her ex-husband. Michael welcomed her and her children to live with him, and the two eventually began dating. On November 12, 2014, Pamela called 911, reporting a masked man had entered the home on West 46th Street and shot and killed Michael in their bathroom. Michael was shot in the chest, the bullet piercing his heart. 31-year-old Michael was rushed to the hospital but died sometime after his arrival. Police initially thought Pamela was a victim, along with her 2 young children and Michael's 6-year-old daughter, who were all home during the shooting. To police, Pamela claimed that Michael had come home from work, went to take a shower while she was cooking dinner. Then a man in a hoodie knocked on the side door and put a gun to her head, asking for Michael. Pamela said she was terrified, so she pointed the man to the bathroom where he shot Michael. The case stalled a bit. The police had no leads initially. Pamela's ex-husband was questioned and eventually ruled out as a suspect. Then police obtained surveillance footage from an auto shop that faced Michael's house. The footage captured a man pulling up in a vehicle, get out, and go directly to Pamela's car, looking for something inside. He then waited in his car until Michael came home, entered the home through the side door. He then exited and fled the scene. A witness had written down the license plate number, which came back to a man named Lakeith Spivey. When police filtered through Pamela's phone records, she was in frequent contact with one particular number leading up to Michael's death. The phone number also led back to Lakeith Spivey. When questioned, Pamela admitted to having a relationship with Lakeith but denied having any part in Michael's murder. Text messages proved otherwise. She and Lakeith had been plotting on Michael's life. They talked about shooting him. Lakeith told police that Pamela talked to him about being unhappy with Michael. She even claimed that he was abusive, but according to reports, there was never any evidence to prove that. Lakeith was arrested first on December 24, 2014. After multiple pretrial hearings, the court set a firm trial date for June 1st, 2015. But there wouldn't be a trial. On May 29, 2015, both Pamela and Lakeith admitted to their involvement in Michael's death. They both pled guilty to one count of aggravated murder, which carried a 3-year gun specification. The following month, Lakeith was sentenced to 28 years to life in prison, while Pamela received a 33-year to life sentence. She must serve 34 years before she's eligible for parole. Now, Pamela filed a motion to set aside her conviction and her sentence in August of 2016. That motion was denied, and per court records, she filed the motion from prison representing herself. The court stated that the motion was denied because she failed to make a valid point on how her rights were infringed or denied. She only provided unsworn statements from herself and others on the subject of her good character, mental health issues, and how she had been a victim in her life. Now, I actually also reached out to Pamela some time back. I didn't get a screen capture of the conversation because it was pretty damn short. I reached out because I wanted to see if she wanted to share her life story. A story that has already been aired on several different true crime series, like Snapped, Killer Couples. Pamela was not interested in speaking to me, and it doesn't seem like she'd be interested in speaking to anyone unless they're trying to help her with her case or sending her some money. So she's very much still playing that victim card and not taking accountability. Michael was a father to a disabled daughter. He worked several jobs to take care of his girls, and he graciously allowed this woman into his home, a woman that is still to this day trying to fight for her freedom as if she's not responsible for taking Michael's life. Rest in peace to Michael Days.
So, got a new product. Here it is. Usually, we get seasonal items here sometimes. We get blessed, especially in the fall and the winter time with, I'm a coffee drinker, so I love when we get different flavors of creamer. Pumpkin spice isn't really my go-to. However, something different, you take advantage of. So here it is. It looks so delicious on there. Hey, so while I got you here, I've noticed that a lot of my videos do, 100,000 plus views. So I'm hoping let's turn them views into signatures for my petition of release. It'll take you about 30 seconds. Just click the link that's on the bottom of the page or on the video or whatever, and really help support saving a life. Like I said, it takes 30 seconds. So hopefully we can get more signatures this way.
Kelly Armstrong was 17 years old when she called in a fake pizza order on July 10, 2007, that lured 41-year-old Robert Tony Swick to a home on Jefferson Street in Newark, where her then boyfriend Matthew Quintana confronted Robert, ultimately shooting him in the chest with a .45 caliber gun that Kelly helped steal from her uncle. Robert died a short time afterwards. 19 hours prior to Robert's death, another pizza delivery guy was robbed at gunpoint. Matthew was the leader, and Callie also called that phony order in. The robbers took cash and some personal items before running away. Police were looking at both of the incidents as being connected. Days later, both teens were arrested after Matthew had already confessed to the crimes to several people. Two teens told police that the same day of the first robbery on South Pine Street and the day that Michael was killed, Matthew talked to them about catching a body and killing somebody. Kelly Armstrong was charged initially with only complicity to aggravated robbery and complicity to grand theft, but a murder charge was later added. Neither teen would go to trial. Both of them pled guilty. Callie was sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole for 18 years on the murder and firearm specification for Robert's death. She was also sentenced for complicity to commit armed robbery and complicity to commit grand theft of a firearm. Those sentences will run concurrently with the murder sentence. Callie goes back to the parole board in 2030. Matthew was also sentenced to life in prison. He will not be eligible for parole until after he serves 26 years on one count of the aggravated murder and two separate firearm specifications. His first parole hearing will be in 2032. At their sentencing hearing, neither Matthew or Callie offered apologies to Robert's family. But according to Callie's free CallieArmstrong.com website, from the very beginning of her sentence, she's carried remorse and has taken responsibility for the actions that led her there and that took Robert's life. The website also showcases her books that she has written, the many certificates that she's received, as well as degrees. However, we must send love and condolences to the family of Robert Tony Swick. Tavell Parker was shot just after 1 a.m. on January 9th, 2016, near Weehawken Place. Police found the 22-year-old lying on the sidewalk with a gunshot wound to his head. He was taken to the Akron City Hospital where he was pronounced dead that evening. Detectives arrested 21-year-old Karita Beavers and charged her with felonious assault and murder. Karita and Tavell dated for nearly 3 years. According to court records, shortly after 1 a.m., Karita was walking with Tavell. Ahead of them was Tavell's mother and a neighborhood friend. As they were walking, 3 gunshots rang out, and Tavell's mother and her friend hid behind a fence. The friend called out to Tavell. Karita answered back, telling them that everything was all good. So Tavell's mom and the friend continued walking. But shortly afterwards, they learned Tavell had been shot. A gun was discovered under Tavell's body as paramedics were treating him. Testing later confirmed that the bullet that caused Tavell's death had been fired from that gun, which was a revolver. Karita was later indicted on 1 count of murder, 1 count of felony murder, and felonious assault, as well as 3 firearm specifications. Her murder trial commenced in November of 2016. The jury found her guilty of murder and felonious assault, with firearm specifications attached to both charges. She was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after serving 18 years. She's housed at the Ohio Reformatory for Women and will not have a parole hearing until 2033. Now, unfortunately, Tavell's mother didn't just lay one son to rest. Tavell was a twin. His twin brother, Cottrell Parker, lost his life on July 21st, 2010, a victim of gun violence on the southeast side of Columbus, Ohio. He was only 16 years old at the time. Both brothers have been described as talented and gifted young men. Tavell was a gifted graphic comic artist, and Cottrell excelled beyond his grade level and received many awards, including an outstanding award from the United States of America. Both had their entire lives ahead of them. May they continue to rest in peace. On June 28, 2024, at approximately 12:04 p.m., police were dispatched to the 1000 block of Olmsted Avenue on the report of a missing 8-year-old little boy, Martonio Wilder. The call came from his mother, LaShonda Wilder.
What was the address of your emergency?
I'm at 1044 Olmsted Avenue, please. I get a bring my 8-year-old son ran away last night.
You said 1044 Olmsted?
And yes,
You see where you last night?
yeah, no, we just got there about like 5 minutes ago. We came looking for it. And he's like, in my house, in my house. He always
What's your
used
son's
to
name?
before. Martonio.
You said Martonio?
Martonio, yeah, it's like Rtonio. Oh my God. Wow, this W-I-L-D-E-R.
You look like he's white, black, and Hispanic. What's he wearing?
He's black. He's black. I don't know what he's wearing. I think he's red and black. Nikes are missing. I don't know what he had on. Nobody said he leave. My other son, they got different rooms, so they was in different rooms. Nobody said he leave. So please, I don't know what time it is.
All the time. When's the last time you seen him?
We all was in there like 9:30, 2 o'clock. My back door was wide open. Oh man, oh man.
What is your name, man?
Lasanda, Lasanda. Oh my God, where's my dad?
Okay, you said he's done this before?
Yeah, but we found him though. We found him at the point one time. We found him. He had jumped out my window before I found him inside my house. He trying to run away. I don't know why. He said he hate me. He said he hate everything. He said he don't care if I be in here. He keep doing this. Oh my God, I don't know.
Yeah, we're gonna get someone out to you as soon as we can, okay?
Oh,
LaShonda told responding officers the same thing she told the 911 dispatcher. She hadn't seen her son since between 9:30 and 10 o'clock the prior night before he went to bed. Police searched the home, but they did not find Martonio. So the search expanded into the neighborhood, and the police helicopter as well as cadaver dogs assisted. When LaShonda saw the cadaver dogs, her cooperation came to a stop. She didn't want the K-9 officers in her house. The Columbus Police Missing Person Unit began to believe there may have been foul play given the information that they had received so far. So at that point, the homicide unit was asked to assist on the case. After LaShonda fled the scene with her 2 small children and her girlfriend without the police being aware, a cadaver dog entered the home. And at 6:20 p.m., police found Martonio's body hidden in a trash bag in the attic. An Amber Alert was issued for LaShonda's 2 small children. They were eventually found safe with the mother of LaShonda's girlfriend. An autopsy revealed that Martonio had died of asphyxia by neck compression. It also revealed signs of blunt force trauma, multiple bruises and cuts to his face and head. He was seriously malnourished and dehydrated. His eyes and abdomen were sunken. His pelvis, collarbone, ribs, and kneecaps were clearly visible through his skin. He weighed just 35 pounds. On the same day of his autopsy, Martonio's mother and her girlfriend turned themselves into police around 5 p.m. Now, police were familiar with this residence. At the time she reported her son missing, the local news, ABC6, reported that police had been called to LaShonda's home at least 13 times since January of 2023, the latest being a disturbance 8 days prior to Martonio's body being found.
LaShonda literally gave her kids away at one point in time, like dropped them off, gave them up. Her mom and her sisters went and got the kids out of children's service. For us, it looked like she was doing better. She came back, she got her own house.
Body cam footage was also released by the Columbus Police Department.
What's going on? Okay, has he run away before? Okay, have you checked the residence thoroughly? Yeah, let me go check out here real quick, okay? Your friends. What?
I haven't seen nobody else when I walked around the attic.
Alright. Alright. You think he's running away? He's a little unruly, and there is a caseworker, and she's like, he probably got mad because she doesn't give him what he wants, so, and then he kind of has a habit of doing it, I guess.
When we were looking, Hamilton at 18.
Seen this kid at all recently? He's missing.
Ultimately, both women were facing the same charges. And a month apart, in June and July of 2025, LaShonda and Johanna agreed to plead guilty to murder and abuse of a corpse.
Now that you know your rights, the rights you are giving up by pleading guilty, and the consequences of pleading guilty, do you want me to accept your guilty plea today?
Each of them received life in prison with the possibility of parole after serving 15 years. And both women are currently at the Ohio Reformatory for Women. Each will have their first parole hearing in 2039.
You gotta deal with the consequences now. We still healing. We miss Martonio. We love him. You could have gave him to us. That was very selfish that you did this.
Condolences to Martonio's family, and may he forever rest in peace. Judith almost escaped prosecution for the 1978 stabbing death of her husband, 41-year-old Donald Morris, and the arson that killed her 5-year-old son, Christopher Stiles, until the case was reopened in 1993. In 1978, Judith was 27 years old. At first, investigators thought that Donald and Christopher were the victims of an accidental fire until things were just not adding up for one sheriff, the sheriff that reopened the case. One suspicious finding was the fact that the fire investigators determined that the fire had 3 separate starting points. There were no autopsies completed on either victim since their deaths were ruled accidental. Judith had claimed that the family was asleep when a furnace explosion caused the fire. However, neighbors that were in a trailer 10 to 15 feet away heard no explosion. Judith made no effort to save her children that were caught in the fire. She had 3 children from a previous marriage that were living in the trailer with her and Donald. Reports say she only left with her 6-year-old child, leaving Christopher and her 9-year-old son behind. The 9-year-old was rescued from the fire. Investigators also found a human ear that was marked with triangles and symbols outside the fire scene, but did not investigate that any further. It was later learned that Judith had a book that showed satanic killing rituals and spells. Donald's body was exhumed, and the accidental death ruling was overturned after it was determined that he actually died from multiple stab wounds. He was also missing an ear. After the fire and deaths of her family, Judith married again for the 4th time, going on about her life. Over a decade after the fire, Judith's son, Edward Bridge, the 9-year-old that was rescued, told investigators while hooked up to a lie detector test in a Pennsylvania prison that he saw his mother argue with Donald, stab him multiple times, and pour some liquid by the furnace and set the trailer on fire. 15 years after Donald and Christopher's deaths, Judith was convicted on 2 counts of aggravated murder and sentenced to 2 life terms. She has gone before the parole board twice, each time with heavy opposition against her release. Her latest denial came in 2023. She will not have another chance at freedom until 2030. Rest in peace to Donald Morris and Christopher Stiles. Abby Worrell and Jamie Kelly were reported missing in September of 1994. Jamie was spending the night at her friend Abby's house when the 2 of them snuck out in the early morning hours of September 25th. They were picked up by Robert Sheets Jr., known as Bobby, and Robert Daniel. Both were juveniles as well. The boys were driven by Bobby's female cousin. Abby and Bobby reportedly once dated. The teens headed back to Bobby's house where they were joined by his neighbor, 19-year-old Sonia Hawkins. From there, they decided to go hang out at a graveyard. Robert's cousin didn't go. As the 4 teens walked back, court records say that Robert told Bobby, "Let's kill them," referring to Abby and Jamie. Bobby didn't take Robert's comments serious, supposedly. But when they got back to Bobby's house, Robert grabbed Bobby's gun and shot both girls, Jamie dying instantly, but Abby was still alive. Abby was then put in the trunk of Bobby's car and moved to a deserted barn. As Robert came back to the car after dumping Abby's body, he was wiping blood off of a knife and stated that he and Sonia had stabbed Abby. The 3 of them, Bobby, Robert, and Sonia, returned to Bobby's home and then loaded Jamie's body into his trunk. They then took her to the same barn. When her body was being dumped, Abby was still moaning, so Robert threw a concrete block on her head to kill her. Again, the trio returns to the Sheets property. Bobby told his mother about the murders. Instead of calling the police, Elsie Sheets washed Bobby, Robert's, and Sonia's clothes. A week later, Bobby came up with the idea of burning the girls' bodies, which had not been found yet. His 54-year-old mother, Elsie, drove him and Sonia to the barn and purchased the gasoline that was used to set the barn, including Abby and Jamie's bodies, on fire. Conflicting stories have been told by those involved in the girls' killings. The motive has been up for debate as well. There was apparently bad blood between Abby and the Sheets family. She and Bobby, like I said, once dated. The prior summer to this, Bobby had called the sheriff's office to report that Abby had been harassing him, but there were never any charges filed. An obvious suspect, due to his soured relationship with Abby, Bobby was questioned by police 2 days after the girls were reported missing, and he denied having any knowledge of their whereabouts. He was able to walk away without any police suspicion, actually. Shortly after the fire was set, though, a newspaper carrier saw the fire and called the police. And that's when the girls' remains were discovered and they were later identified. A week after that, a break came in the case. Sonia Hawkinson's mother and stepfather had contacted authorities and reported that several guns had been stolen from their trailer. They also reported that they were suspicious that Sonia was responsible for the theft. When she was interrogated about the stolen weapons, she not only confessed to stealing them, she also revealed that one of the stolen guns, a .45 caliber Western-style revolver, had been used to murder Abby and Jamie. Now, stories about the disposal of the murder weapon, they vary, and the gun was never recovered. But Sonia Hawkins, Robert Daniel, and Elsie and Bobby Sheets were arrested on October 10th. All of them told different stories to the police that made them look less involved as possible. Bobby told police that Robert shot the girls for no reason and he was unable to stop it from happening. His mother claimed she had no knowledge of the murders and she was just destroying evidence in a misguided attempt to protect her son. Robert admitted to shooting one of the girls, and every version he told still said he was in the wrong place at the wrong time, though. And Sonia claimed to be an innocent bystander. Though she knew there was bad blood between the Sheets and Abby, she did not know that she and her friend would be killed that night. Sonia was never implicated as the shooter by her co-defendants, and she was able to cut a deal with prosecutors, in exchange, of course, for her cooperation. She was ultimately sentenced to life in prison with parole after 28 years. Although Daniel had originally planned to argue an insanity defense, he eventually opted to plead guilty in exchange for a life sentence as well. He had a chance to go before the parole board in August of 2024, 12 years early actually. Bobby pled no contest to identical charges as Robert Daniel and received a life sentence as well. Initially, both men were not scheduled to see the parole board until they were both 53 years old. But a new Ohio law gave inmates that entered prison as juveniles on long sentences a chance for early parole. Bobby was denied parole in October of 2021. He'll see the parole board again in 2026. Robert was denied early release in 2024, and he'll visit the parole board again in 2029. The eldest of the crew, Elsie Sheets, took no deals and proceeded to trial. Several inmates testified that she had made incriminating statements while in the county jail. Sonia's testimony also painted Elsie as an aware and active participant that knew about the murders. After 9 hours deliberating, the jury convicted her on charges of complicity to commit aggravated murder, complicity to commit gross abuse of a corpse, evidence tampering, obstructing justice, and complicity to commit arson. She was sentenced to life in prison. Her first parole hearing will be held in 2033. She'll be 93 years old. Very devastating that these two young girls lost their lives for absolutely nothing. And even more disgusting that a 50-something-year-old woman assisted in the cover-up. Many condolences to both Jamie and Abby's parents and families, and may they forever rest in peace. At approximately 5:48 p.m. on October 11th, 2006, Brandy walked into a Columbus, Ohio hospital with 2.5-year-old Brooklyn Branham. identifying herself as Brooklyn's mother, telling doctors that Brooklyn had fallen down a flight of stairs. Brooklyn had no pulse, was not breathing, and was cold to touch. Her pupils were fixed and dilated, a sign that she was already dead. The toddler had significant signs of trauma that included bruising on her face, her head, as well as her buttocks and her vaginal area. Brooklyn was pronounced dead at 6:19 p.m. Brandy told the doctor working the emergency room that day that she was home with her 2-year-old son in Brooklyn. She called the kids downstairs and then heard a thud. She then found Brooklyn at the bottom of the stairs, stiff and in a seizure. She picked her up and drove her to the hospital that was about 2 miles away. When questioned by police at the hospital, she told the same story, adding that Brooklyn was at the bottom of the stairs with foam coming out of her mouth. During that interview with police, she also admitted that her name was not Teresa Branham and said that she identified herself as Brooklyn's biological mom to get the toddler faster help. An autopsy performed on Brooklyn's body revealed additional bruising and a skull fracture on the right side, which caused bleeding between her brain. Her death was ruled a homicide. As a result of Brooklyn's death, her father's girlfriend, Brandy Ely, was indicted with 1 count of murder, 1 count of felonious assault, and 2 counts of endangering children. Brandy pleaded not guilty, and the case proceeded to a bench trial. She maintained that Brooklyn's injuries had come from her falling down the stairs. The state argued that Brooklyn's injuries were indeed caused by blunt force trauma. Both sides, the defense and the state, called witnesses to support their arguments. In the end, Franklin County Common Pleas Judge David E. Kane found Brandy guilty of murder, felonious assault, and child endangering. He sentenced her to life in prison with no chance of parole for 20 years. Brandy told the court that she was very sorry Brooklyn was no longer here and that she didn't mean for this to happen, that she loved Brooklyn and that she was a daughter she never had. Brooklyn's grandmother said the family lost a child with a big heart and a beautiful personality. Brandy is housed at the Dayton Correctional Institution. Her first parole hearing will be held in July of 2028. Gone too very soon. Rest in peace to Brooklyn Branham. And that's a wrap on women serving life in Ohio. Thank you for listening and tuning in. To all of my friends, I thank you for your continued support. If you're new here and have yet to subscribe, go ahead and smash the subscribe button. Definitely have those notifications on so that you don't miss anything that Anna B has coming. Until next time, my friends, y'all be good.